Another damaging leak coming out of Trump's white and gold house, and for once, Pete Hegseth is not to blame. Although you know what they say, when you hear hoofbeats, think horse's ass like Hegseth. This leak, however, makes Signalgate look like the raging amateur mistake that it was, and reveals instead the Trump team's all-out war and militarization of America. Obtained by the New Republic, the memo not only outlines permanently using the military to police American cities, but also spells out that these plans must be undertaken with the minimum of written documents so as not to be discovered. So the Trump administration is doing more than going rogue. They are instituting a full-on fascist state with plans for sending the military into Florida and Texas, where they will be received warmly by Republican governors. And if that's not bad enough, and it is, the Washington Post has just uncovered its own leak, that the Trump administration is doing pretty much the same thing with tariffs. Trump's excuse has always been that tariffs are necessary because countries are ripping us off. And he parades that clown Peter Navarro, the only economist in the world who believes in tariffs, to spin how tariffs are going to make us richer. Conservative columnist George Will just got done ripping that theory to shreds.
Bill, I have a chronic, incurable trade deficit with my barber. Once a month, I buy a haircut from her, she buys nothing from me. She has a trade deficit with Iowa because she buys corn products and pork, and no Iowan ever comes to Washington to get a haircut.
And European reporting about tariffs also reveals that Trump's tariffs are not as they appear.
Which economy will suffer most from this deal, the US or the EU?
Well, I think in all honesty, we will see different types of suffering. In the US, we will clearly see more inflation coming. In Europe, we will see more downside risks to growth. So, and we knew this from the beginning, that there are no winners in trade wars. There are only losers.
So Trump's tariffs make no economic sense, they're done with smoke and mirrors, and in fact, they're damaging to the economy, as Jerome Powell has stated.
The evidence seems to be mostly not paid only to a small extent through exporters lowering their price, and companies or retailers, sort of people who are upstream, institutions that are upstream from the consumer, are paying most of this for now.
After having seen Trump try and use tariffs to punish Brazil for prosecuting his ally, former Brazilian President Bolsonaro, the Washington Post got suspicious. And sure enough, in a shocking exclusive, the Post reveals that it got its hands on an 8-page memo revealing that, as they report, President Donald Trump's freewheeling use of tariffs as a tool of American power may have been more extensive than was publicly known, encompassing an array of national security goals as well as the interests of individual companies. And the things that the Trump administration are trying to leverage are as outrageous and as right-wing as can be imagined. For example, the Post reports that State Department officials considered demanding that U.S. trading partners vote against an international effort to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by the ocean-going container ships that are the backbone of global trade. To no surprise, the Trump administration is also tying military power to the tariffs. The Post reports that the South Korean government should be urged to endorse a change in the positioning of U.S. troops stationed there under the United States Forces Korea Command. And that administration officials plan to push several countries, including Taiwan, India, and Indonesia, to increase their defense spending or to buy more U.S. military hardware. But of course, if it's Trump, then it also has to include coercive business practices like this. In Lesotho, a poor African nation that Trump had threatened with 50% tariffs, negotiators wanted the government to finalize deals with multiple U.S. firms. One Power, a renewable energy startup, should be granted a 5-year withholding tax exemption and a license to develop a 24-megawatt project. Regulators should also waive a legal requirement for Starlink, Musk's satellite-based internet provider, to provide a physical address in Lesotho before conducting business there. And if there's one thing we know about Trump and his throng of thugs, it's that it won't stop there. Once Trump has broken the limit on what trade deals inscribe, like he's done with Brazil, how long will it be before they demand other things? Overthrowing governments, providing refuge for tyrants, silencing their press, regulating their universities. The list is endless. So, in some respects, you have to tip your hat to Team Trump. Here we thought that Trump and his stooges were creating Nazi Germany, and it turns out that they are creating the Soviet Union as well. Way to go, MAGA. You destroyed your own well being and the world with just one small minded vote. I'm Anthony Vincent Gallo for Occupy Democrats.